Hello, I'm Holly, and this is day 15 in my 1001 Ways to Heal series. I'm a metaphysical teacher of self-healing, and I welcome you to my channel. And today we're going to figure out what the heck is the wise self. We all want more wisdom in our life. We all want to be more centered, but in order to understand the wise self, you have to understand two other things, the reasoning self and the emotional self. And before we get to that, a little backstory. There's a lady named Marsha Linehan who's the one to credit for what I'm talking about today. She's the founder of DBT therapy, which stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. You don't have to remember that. But she healed herself of a diagnosis called borderline personality disorder that she classified herself under the umbrella of DBT. It kind of is like bipolar disorder, but a little more destructive, high highs, low lows, a little more extreme emotion. It's usually born out of childhood trauma, with the inability to regulate your emotions so you become dysregulated. And it's hard to become a success in life, but she learned how to be a success in spite of it, and she learned how to control her emotions, and we're learning from her today. So let's get to the wise self though. What is the wise self? So in DBT, one of the main goals is to experience and learn how to access the wisdom within. It's like the perfect middle ground between your head and your heart. And this is what we're after. And we'll talk a little bit more about the wise self in a minute, but first let's talk about the reasoning self and the emotional self. So the reasoning self, important to know. And okay, I'm gonna go to a little bit of a stereotype, so I apologize, but picture kind of somebody who's sort of typically intellectual. Maybe they don't show a lot of emotion, a little bit in their head. You know, again, no shade here. Just kind of somebody you might call heady, or maybe they're kind of calculating. They don't feel a lot. They just kind of think a lot. Maybe a little more clinical or procedural. When you think about people like that, you might wish that you could tell them like, hey, could you smile or maybe lighten up a little bit? You know, maybe show a little more emotion. But this way of behaving is kind of common, right? In someone who has a hard time feeling or showing their emotion, like healthy emotion, right? And so with DBT, this is called the reasoning self, the reasoning self. Now the reasoning self stands in opposition to what's called the emotional self. Keeping in mind that all of us have the ability to act in all of these ways, right? The highs and the lows, but DBT calls the emotional self someone who is overly emotional, someone whose emotions are too far out on a limb. Maybe their emotion becomes excessive, maybe a destructive force in their life. Their ultra emotionality might end up hurting the people that are close to them, or they might end up self-sabotaging, having a hard time controlling their emotions. So, you know, they might say things that are extreme, you know, things that cause upset around them and chaos. I love raw, emotional people, and people should speak their minds, and sometimes in ways that are shocking or bold, but that's not so much the issue. The issue is, you know, because I'm kind of bold sometimes, but the issue is the idea that it shouldn't get in the way of your ability to function in relationships and a job. And I think all of us have a little bit of both the reasoning self and the emotional self. Everybody maybe is just a hair bipolar because in some ways we are a little bit up and down because, you know, we're human, right? We're human and we have our highs and we have our lows. But even though our goal today is to understand our wise self that lives in all of us, if you're always your wise self, I might worry about you a little bit because to err is human, right? But if you find yourself or you know someone else whose extremes get in the way of relating easily with others, there's things you can do to bring yourself back into balance, which is your wise self, to find your wise self day in and day out more often. But these methods for helping you find your wise self are so important right now because unless you've been in a cave, you would know that our world is kind of erupting right now with a bit of extremism. And so it's important that we keep ourselves in the center without overreacting to everything or underreacting for that matter. It's like finding our wise self in 2025, right? So we need that. And I'm going to give you a quick nutshell version of what you can do according to DBT. Number 1, notice which behaviors and emotions keep you from reaching your goals in life, whether it's self-sabotaging behaviors through negative self-talk or behavioral patterns that keep you at odds with people. That stuff that creates what are called stuck points in your life that keep you from being the person that you know you can be, right? Noticing what it is that keeps you from being your best. And number 2, practicing non-judgment of self and of others. Non-judgment. This keeps you centered in your wise self without overreacting or withdrawing. Just letting people be, including yourself. Everybody has a story, right? Everybody has a reason for why they do what they do. And it just hinders us. If we always judge everything as good or bad, right or wrong, it might be tempting to feel like we were right or justified in labeling something and labeling a person. But ultimately, those kinds of ripple effects of, that judgment just ends up coming back on us. It just hurts us. So let's just let people be. And you know what? So what if they judge you? It's really none of your business, because it's none of our business what people think about us or what they say about us anyway. So, and what if they acted first? It doesn't help if you act back. It just keeps you stuck and it ends up hurting you. Again, not saying you shouldn't stand up for yourself, right? But there's a difference between standing up for yourself and putting people in their place as a matter of habit. So, all right. So number 3, learning how to jump to the wise self when in distress, which is called distress tolerance. Ask yourself, how well do you tolerate distress? In distressing situations, do you knee-jerk into all kinds of emotion and blame other people, yelling, or do you breathe first and stay in the calmer, wise self? I like to have people picture like a little figurine of like a spirit animal on their shoulder, right? Maybe yours is like a dolphin or a lion, or maybe if you're really reactionary, maybe a sloth to counterbalance all of the emotion, right? Something that reminds you to slow down, be more present. Or if you're really stuck in your head without a lot of emotion, maybe withdrawn, maybe you're depressed, and that's okay. But maybe your spirit animal could be like a friendly, I think of like a golden retriever, because they're not shy, they're loving. They put themselves right in the center of the room, ready to engage in a loving way. I love dogs so much, and they help you feel safe and comfortable, calm on the inside. They're always available. They're not guarded. So that's just a thought. But number 4, again, in trying to find our wise self, we can practice mindfulness exercises that keep us in the moment. Sometimes doing what's called mental noting, where you literally notice one thing at a time, like, okay, I'm putting my feet on the floor. I'm getting out of bed. I'm putting my feet on the floor. I'm putting my sock on. Now I'm putting my shoe on. As you do it, I'm noticing my sock and I breathe, or I'm noticing my toes, and maybe smile at your silly little toes, just in the moment, like adding in a little bit of noticing, and I'm smiling and breathing in all of those statements, moment to moment noticing, right? And so today I just wanted to give an overview of the idea of bringing your life into the center, which is your wise self. So not so emotional that you get in your own way, not so calculating and heady that you are emotionless or withdrawn. There's a sweet spot between the head and the heart, and connecting the two and finding balance is like laying the groundwork for having a really enriching and, perhaps easier life. A little less drama, a little less chaos, a lot more centeredness, a lot more heart and soul. And think about where your wise self lies, and which side of that do you need to either increase or decrease to bring your wise self to the forefront. So many good things to talk about here. I don't think I'll ever run out of ideas, because once I bring up one topic, there's like 30 topics that spin off of one of those, and I love it. And I really do plan on getting to 1001 in my 1001 Ways to Heal series. So keep following me and keep sharing my videos if you know anybody that may benefit from them. Like, subscribe, check out my 40 Days to Wellness program on hollyshealinghub.net, and I'll check back with you soon, my sweet friend. Be really good to yourself today. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.